Hey and welcome. This is Lee Waller, and I am working in Unreal Engine 5.7.1 in the motion design tools. I'm going to take a look at creating this animation here, the Clown Car Animations logo, just something that I created for this. In this tutorial, I'm going to take a look at the free place cloner and how we can use that and a spline to create this text along with an effector to create this text animation. I'll also look at the basic circle cloner to create that red and white tint back there, a couple of options on it and how to distort those meshes there. And that clown car object mesh there is from Sketchfab. I'll have the link down there below. It's from Cooler Ruler right here. It was a free model that I grabbed from there for this. So I want to say thank you for that, and you can grab that also. I'm going to start with the text animation, so we'll work on the word clown. So let's go over here to the actors, and we'll need a text actor. I'm going to need 2 text actors for every letter, and every letter is going to have to be separate. So with this first one selected, we'll make this the C, and I'm going to make this C, and then I'm also going to underscore background, BG right there. This will be our background of that. And down here, I'm going to change this to a capital C. And then our font, I'm going to change that to Show Card Gothic. You can choose whatever font you want to use there. On the font size, I'm going to bring this up to 120. And then move down, and I'm going to horizontally and vertically align these to the center. And on down, we'll go to Geometry. And I'm going to set this extrude up to 30, and then the bevel to 15. And now we'll need to create some colors for this. With it selected, I'm going to go to the material designer, open that up, and I'll create this front material first. PBR, hit continue. I'm going to go to the base color here and change that to a solid. And I'll start off with a white. Hit OK on it. And then I'm going to save this out. Let me start a new folder for materials. Label this white, MD_white. And then while we're in here, I'm going to go ahead and make 2 more. I'm going to change this out to red. Hit OK, and then we'll save this one. Back into the materials right there, and red. And then 1 more, so we can get all of these out of the way. We'll make this one yellow. Hit OK, and just like we've been doing, let's save that out also. Into our materials and yellow. And we can close Material Designer. Let me go check those 3 colors there. There they are. I'm going to select all of them and just save them real quick. I want to make this background text red, so I'm going to select that, then go over here and just apply that to all 4 pieces right there. I'm going to duplicate this real quick. We've got part of it set up. We'll make some changes to it. So I'm just going to select that and then Control D, duplicate it. And I'm going to label this CFG, C_FG for C foreground. This will be the foreground, and we'll go back in here to the details and make a few adjustments. We need to go to our geometry right here, and I'm going to change this extrude to 10, and the bevel will drop down to 5, and that's where we want it. And now we can go make some changes to our colors. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to bring this out just a little bit. We'll set that to -5 on the x-axis. That brings it out a little bit. So we can see that. I'm going to jump out of our main camera, go into the default viewport, and then we can kind of swing around and take a look. And you can see there, let's see, we may bring that out a little bit more, maybe -10 for right now. We'll take a look at that, and we can adjust it a little bit later. But now we'll go in and change out our colors for this on the front material. We will make that yellow. So let's go over here. We'll select that yellow, drop back into here. And then on the bevel and extrude, we'll make that white. And of course, you're welcome to experiment with these and see what you would like to create. And so I think that'll work for right now for this design of this text. Now I need these to stay together, so we're going to wrap them up into a null object. So I'm going to select both of them and then just click our null object right there. That's going to group those two together. And I will just label this C_text. With the text built this way, we can also make adjustments, and I am going to make an adjustment on the front foreground piece there. I'm going to extrude that just a little bit more so that it actually cuts into the other, so maybe about 15. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. And again, you can work with this however. I'm going to slide that back just a little bit, maybe -2. And whatever your preference is on that, you can feel free to work with that. But we have that text created now, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, Control D, and this will be the process for the rest of the word and the rest of the letters. So I'm going to use this one. I will go ahead and label this L_text, delete that. And you can change these if you want to. I'm just going to leave them for right now because as long as I have that null object labeled, I will know what they are. But then we can go into both of them and we'll just need to change that out to the letter so that it corresponds. And I'll close that. We can hide that C and then take a look at this, and there is our L. And so I'm going to continue that process out for the entire word. So I'll do this one more time. I'm going to duplicate that letter and then just relabel this. This will be my O. And then I'm going to get rid of that 2 right there. I'll leave the others as they are. And then we're just going to go in here and change out the letter O. I'm going to continue this process and I'll be right back with the other 2 letters. All right, so I went ahead and I did both words, clown car. I am going to hide all of the letters for the word car and then make visible all of the letters for the word clown. We'll animate that first. I'm going to go back into my main camera right here. To create this animation, I am going to use this free place cloner. This allows us to add any object in and place it wherever we want to. But to line these up and to have the curve that I want them to in this design, I'm going to use a spline also to place them. To create the actual animation of them popping in, we'll also use an effector. So this is going to take a little bit of setup, but we'll start off first with a spline. Now we do have this spline tool here, but I don't prefer this one because it takes a little too much work. So I'm going to jump out of motion design mode and I'm going to go into modeling mode. And right here in the Create tab, you'll see this option to draw spline. I'm going to select it, then I'm just going to jump into the viewer and click once and then hit accept. You don't see it right now, but there is a spline point in our viewer. I'm going to select the spline actor right here that we've placed in. And I'm going to reset this right here. And that spline now is right here at this point. So we can see this a little bit better. I'm going to jump out of our main view right here. I'm going to click right here, go to our 4 view. And this should be your top view. If this does not say top view, just select that, go to top view. And then I'm going to jump into that view. May need to zoom out just a little bit. So in this view, I'm going to select the spline actor and make sure that is it right there. And then I'm going to right click on it. And we have all of these options. I'm going to go to the spline generation panel, open that up, and you'll see that we have the ability to create an arc. I'm going to select it. And now we have a number of options. I'm going to go with 4 points on this. I'm going to open up the radius and you can see that spline, that arc right there. I'm going to open up this radius to 500. And then I'm going to drop the degrees down to 45 degrees. And then I'm going to reverse the direction on it. I'm just trying to get this into the place that I want it. This is where our camera is pointing this direction. I want my text to kind of go on that arc here in front of everything that we build. So I'm part of the way there. Again, with 4 points, 500-degree radius, and 45 degrees with that reverse direction, we should be good on this. So I'm just going to select over here. That'll close up that panel. And now with that spline actor again selected, I'm going to go over here to my rotation, and I'm going to begin to rotate that. And we should get around, I think best will be about 67.5 on that. And then we can slide this over and just kind of center up that center point right there. If you want to get real close on that, you can zoom in, and it's going to be somewhere in there. See, we'll try, I'll just go with that 191 for right now. That is close enough to center. And I'll go ahead and bring this out front. We may need to adjust this a little bit later, but we'll see where we get right there for right now. So we have that spline, and what we're going to do is line up all of these letters along this spline. So I'm going to jump back out of this view and go into our main view. Now we need to attach all of these letters to the spline. To do that, we'll go into the individual letters and make sure you have your operator stack open. You're going to need that because we're going to add a modifier to each of these letters. So I'm going to select on the null object for that set of letters and then go into the operator stack, go to add modifiers, and this spline path right here, we'll add that in. And so we'll select that. There's only one spline actor in there. We'll select it. We'll make some changes here in the spline actor. I'm going to change this mode from percentage to distance. And that's just looking at the spline and how you want to position these along the spline. If you want to use percentage, right now we're at 0%, meaning the very beginning of the spline. If we wanted to do 95%, you can see that we're almost to the end, or 100%. Guess I should do 99%, and we're at the end of the spline right there. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to use the distance here, and I really don't know the full distance because once we arc this, it gets a little weird. So I'm going to try based on some experimentation. I'm at 390 right there. Let's try 391, 392, 393. Okay, so at 393, it jumps back to the beginning. So the longest distance we have on this is 392. So I'll set that back, and we'll adjust this as we go along to get the spacing between the letters as we need it. I'm going to leave it on orient, but what we need to do is we need to change this base orientation right here to 90 degrees. So we have our first letter set up, and you can use this property right here, this distance property right here, to animate along that if you want to. Now, I'm just using it to position these on this arc because that's the way I want them to appear. But if you are looking for a way to animate them along a spline, you can do that with this distance or percentage option, whichever you choose to use. I'm going to go back into the Motion Design Outliner, and I'm going to actually bring the size down on this text. Let me lock this, and I'm going to set this to 0.65. And I'll need to do that on the rest of them. So let me do that real quick. Just set all of these to 0.65. All right, so I'm now going to add the rest of these in. I'll do one or two more, and then I'll jump out. So we need to select the letter, go to its operator stack, add the spline path right there, and then we will select that spline we want it to be on. I'm going to change this from percentage to distance, and I'll change this to 90 degrees. There's our L, and then right here in the distance, I'm going to start, let's see how 250 does. That gets us real close, maybe 300. We'll try that for right now. We'll start spacing out the other letters and then come back and see how it looks. So I'm going to continue to do this one more time on the O. Select the O and then go to operator stack, add modifiers, spline path, and we'll choose that spline. Change this to distance, and let me rotate this 90 degrees. And let's try 225 on that. Maybe that may not be exactly where I want it. So let me try 215. We'll see on that. Let's see what the other letters look like real quick. I like the look of the OW in, so I'm going to bring the L and the C in just a little bit closer. And so I'm going to go with 365 on that. And again, if this isn't lined up exactly the way you want it, I think this is pretty close. I might could shift everything over a little bit. Now to animate these, we're going to need to put them in a cloner. I'm going to go back over here and go to my motion design mode right there, and we'll go to cloners. And like I said, we're going to use this free place cloner. So I'm going to double click on it. That is now in our outliner right here. And I need to add all of these letters in there. So I'm going to select them. I'm going to start down here on the N, select that, hold down the Shift key and go up to C, select all of those. Then I'm going to drag them down and I'm going to drop them in that cloner right there. We will get rid of that default clone, select it and just delete it. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to use an effector on these to animate them. And the only way to use an effector is through the cloner. I'm going to select that cloner right there. We'll close that up. And then let's make a little more room here. I'm going to drop down in the cloner and I'm going to go to this create linked effector right here. Click on it. There's our effector. And I'm going to change that from this sphere type to this box. And if you're not real familiar with an effector, on this box, you have two areas. It's a little difficult to see. There is a red box in there, and then there's a blue box out here. The distance between these two boxes is how this is going to create the animation. It'll make a little more sense once we kind of have this set up. I am going to go with this offset, and what I want to do is I want to pop each one of these in using scale. So I'm going to go down here on the scale. It's set to 1, which for the letters, that's 100% in size. So I'm going to set this to 0, and you can see something's already beginning to happen. And the red box right now is the inner extent, and then the blue box is the outer extent. We're actually going to invert those because of the way that this is working. I'll do that in just a minute, but I want to demonstrate how this is working. I do know that, and I'll show you where we are in our 3D space. We're looking at this from the top down. Here is that inner extent or that red box right there. This is the blue box right here. And then this is our text. So you can see what we really need to do is get this inner extent up here. So we'll go ahead and move that up. And now that's going to be affecting our text quite a bit more. You can see that they've shrunk in size on the scale. What I need to do is encompass the entire text with this inner extent. So I'll go ahead and we're going to drop back down here to the shape of it. Let me open this up so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to set both of these to free, and you'll see how this is going to work here. I'm going to start to open up the inner extent right there. I want it to encompass all of the text. So somewhere right in there. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'll set this to 200. And then I'm going to, because of the way it's going to ease on this, I'll go ahead and set the outer extent to 400 right there. Let's go back into now our main view. And what has happened is our text has disappeared because we've set that scale down to 0. But if we start to move this back and forth, you'll see how in between these two boxes, it scales up or down based on where we are. Now, the way this is set up at the moment is inside of the inner extent or inside of the red box, everything is scaled down to 0. And then when we get outside of the red box, it starts scaling back up. And by the time we pass the blue box, we're at 100% on the scale. So we want to invert that, but I just wanted to show you first how this works. And so let's drop down. We'll invert the type. So now wherever the inner box is, which now they've switched colors, but wherever that inner extent is, everything is going to be 100% scale. So we can animate this now to create the text animation. There is one more thing I want to make an adjustment on this before we go and animate this. See how we're just going from 0 to 100% on the scale? Let me grab this right here. I want it to bounce in, kind of have a little bit more of a animated look to it. And right now they're just going from 0 to 100%. So let's go back down here to the shape and this easing right here. There's one that we're going to select. I'm going to go from the linear, which is just that straight ramp up or ramp down, and we'll go to this out back. And what that's going to do is put that extra little pop into it. You'll see how they'll go a little bit above 100% on the scale and then back down to 100%. I'm going to make some changes to my sequencer real quick. I'm going to change this to 30 frames per second. And then right here under the playback options, I'm going to set up for 300 frames, which will give us 10 seconds on this animation. And now we can animate this. Again, we're just going to use the effector on it. And I'll slide this on out over here to this side. And let's see, right about there. I'll set a keyframe for it. And let's try 2 seconds on this. We'll see if we can change the time on this as we need, but we'll go for 2 seconds right now on this. And then I'm just going to set our Y value back to 0. Make sure we click that keyframe right there to add that in. And I'm going to go ahead and change these both to linear. And then jump back and we'll take a look. All right. So now we've animated our first text. You can adjust the timing of this as well as that bounce. First, the timing, we can, if we want this to move a little bit faster, let's try a second on that and we'll just jump back. All right. And then the easing on this, if you want to extend out the outer extent just a little bit more or less to give that some more or less bounce, you will have to adjust. Let's see, I'll go ahead and just set that, probably make it a little more drastic. I'll go ahead and set that to 600. But what we're going to need to do is we'll need to go back to our first keyframe here. That means that we've increased our outer extent, so we need to actually adjust the position so that all of our letters are scaled all the way down. And so let's try that now. Okay, that looks pretty good. I actually like that, so I'm going to leave it right there. But again, you can adjust that bounce based on that easing right there in between those two. Go back and take a look at this one more time. Now, if you're bothered by the effector, you can just click that off right there. It does not disable it. It just hides those boxes. Since I've set up my first text, the second text will set up the same way. I'm going to go ahead now and take a look at building that background. We'll use a rectangle on this, so we'll go over here to 2D shapes and just double click on the rectangle. That adds that rectangle in. We can right now, if we want to hide that text. Let me label this real quick. Cloner_clown text. And I'll hide that. And if you want to hide that spline actor also. We'll change the size of the rectangle. With it selected, I'm going to drop down here to our mesh size. I'm going to set that to free. We'll set this to 50 on the X, jump over and set this to 300 on the Y. Now there are in the operator stack, in the modifiers, there is a bend and then there is a taper. And I tried real hard between those two to get the look that I was going for, but I couldn't get there. So I'm actually going to change this into a mesh and make the adjustments as a mesh. To do that, we're going to need to make sure that's selected. And then we're going to go into modeling mode again. I'm going to transform this. That's the first thing we need to do. So in the transform tab right there, we're going to convert this to a mesh. Very simple, static mesh, hit accept. Now we need a lot of geometry in this so we can bend it the way that we want to. To do that, we're going to need to go into mesh mode and then hit remesh. I'm going to drop this down since we don't make that many triangles. We don't need quite that many. I'm going to set this down to 1000. And everything else we'll leave as is and then hit accept. You can just see all of the geometry that is creating in there and hit accept. Now this will bend the way that we want it to. We'll go into deform and we'll use this warp mode. We want to bend it first. And it's already bending it. I want to bend this only at 45 degrees. I'm going to hide the original right there. Just it's a little bit easier to see it this way. So you can see that it is bent, but not in the direction we want it to be. So I'm going to swing around just a little bit here so we can see this. Back up just a little bit. And here in our Delta mode settings right here, I'm going to go to the Z axis right here, and I'm going to set this to a negative 90 degrees. And now it is bending in the direction we want it. This will make a little more sense when we get it into the cloner. I'm going to hit accept on that. I also want to squish this in just a little bit, and let's make sure that is selected. And we're going to go right back into warp, and let me slide around here. This time we're not going to go to bend. We're actually going to change this operation from bend to flare and squish. Right now I think we're flaring. So I'm going to change our flare right here, and I'm going to bring this down to a negative 15. And so it squishes it just a little bit on the inside right there. And that should work for what we need. And I'm going to set that delta mode right there back to 0, and we'll hit accept. Let's go back into motion design mode now, and we can jump back into our main camera. I'm going to go ahead and add a material to this. We'll duplicate this, but let's go ahead and add the red material to it. With it selected, I'm just going to grab that red material, go in there and drop it on there. So over here in our cloners tab right there, select it, and I'm going to add in the circle cloner. Just double click on that. Hopefully that will drop that in. And we do not need those default clones there. So I'm going to open that up, delete that default clone, and then drag the rectangle down into it. And now you can see how it flips those back around and they're in the right direction. I want another instance of this in there so we can set up our white stripes. So I'll just select it and hit Control D. That duplicates it. And with that second one selected right there, let's just go in and we'll select the white right there, and we'll go back here to it and to its material and just click on the white. Now we can make some adjustments to the cloner. With it selected, we'll drop down to our layout options right here. We are on circle. We're going to change this count from 9 to 20. And then we're going to bring this radius down. Let's see, I think we're going to hit maybe around 135. I'll go ahead and type that in. All right, and that'll work good. So on this cloner right here, I'm going to label that as tint base. And now I'll bring back in our text. We'll create the top and the bottom of this in a similar way, but for those, all we need is just the 2D shape, the rectangle there. So I'll just double click on a new rectangle, add that in, go into its settings, and on the mesh size right here, make sure that's set to free, and we'll just set this to 50 by 50. And I know we can't see it, but what I'll do is go ahead and on our material, I'll go ahead and set up the red material on it. So select asset right there, MD underscore red, we'll apply it. And just like before, we'll add this to a circle cloner. So in our cloners tab, double click on that circle. We'll add that in, and I'm going to have to reset the location on that. And so right there, I'll just hit reset. So we'll swap out the clone there. I'm going to open up the cloner, select the default, delete it, and bring the rectangle down into the cloner. This will be our top, so I'll go ahead and move it up. Like we did before, I'm going to duplicate that, Control D. We have another instance of it. We'll go down here to the materials and change this out to the white material. Back in our cloner, we'll go up here, circle, and I'm going to bring this count up to 21. And then we'll bring that down just a little bit. Bring those close together. Looks like we'll try 165 on it also. Out just a little bit, 167 maybe. All right, that looks good. And we can bring that up if we need to on the position, wherever we need to set that. Give us a little more room at the top. And then all we need to do right here is we'll label this and then duplicate it. And with that one set, I will duplicate it, Control D, and we'll just label this one tint bottom. And I'm sure you can figure it out. We're going to drop that down. I'll go ahead and set that to maybe negative 150. And so we have the top and bottom of our tent. To animate all three of those, I'll do that real quick. It's pretty simple. We're just going to rotate them. So I'll start with the tent base right there, select it, and we're going to rotate it on that Z axis right there. Very simple. Let me go back to the beginning of my timeline right there, and I'll hit a keyframe for that and then jump to the very end of the timeline and whatever the speed is on it that you want. I just set it to a full rotation of 359 right there. And I'm going to pull off the easing on these, just select both of them, go to linear so that it's a constant rate, and you'll see there. And do the same for the top and the bottom of this, but we'll just throw those in the opposite direction. Select that. Let me go back to the beginning here. Set a keyframe. Jump to the end and set this to a negative 359. Set that keyframe, and then we'll do the same thing for the bottom right there. And hopefully we've got everything. Looks like it. I'm just going to now set the easing to linear on this. And we should be good for all of that. I will stagger the text animation a little bit on the timing there. So let me just go down here, maybe about a second in, we'll have that pop in. I do want to move the clown text up, but in doing so, I need to make sure that I bring the effector along with me. I'm going to bring that up. So rather than re-keyframe that, I'm going to go down here to the inner extent on this and just make sure that this blue box is covering up here. And as long as it's doing that, we should be fine. So I'll increase the height right there, and we should be good. It doesn't matter about this area down here. It's not going to affect anything. And so we should be good on that now. All right, that looks really good. So if you didn't get enough of it the first time, I'm going to go ahead and set up the word car now and animate it. To get started on that, I'll go ahead and bring back the visibility on all of those. They're back there in dead middle, so we can see those. I'll just hide this tent base real quick. There they are. What we'll do is we're going to need to duplicate this spline actor. Select it and Control D. I'm going to make the spline actor a child of the cloner. It's not going to affect our spacing or anything, but I want to do this because I want to kind of keep things together, but it's going to mess things up. So when I do that, and if for any reason, now it's not doing it, but if for any reason when you do that and your text moves, just go to that spline actor and reset it to 0 there on the Z axis, and that should have things back in order. So if we have to move this again, everything will be together and we shouldn't have any issues. So we're going to use this second spline actor for the word car. Before I do that, I am going to drop this back down to 0. And now we'll attach these 3 letter sets to that spline actor. To do that, I'm going to go right here to C. We'll start with it. Operator stack. Go into the spline path. We'll set it to that second spline actor. Going to set this to distance. Change this to 90 degrees. And I'm going to set up all 3 of them first. Then we'll come back and change the scale of them and then also place them on the spline. Now I'm going to go back in and drop the scale on all of these real quick. 0.65 on each of them. Now we can position them on that spline. I'm going to start with the A and try to get it more in the center. And so on the distance there, and so I've set that at 190 on the A, and then I'll go over to the C, go right here, and let's try 250. Let's see. All right, a little bit more, 275 maybe. Back just a little bit, maybe 265. All right, we're going to split the difference right there on 270. And now we'll go to the R. maybe 120 on that one. Okay, 115, 115, or maybe 110. All right, we'll go with that. So we've got those placed on that spline now. We'll go back into the motion design outliner, and we're going to need to now add a clone in for this. So back over here in our cloners, we'll use that free placement cloner again. Just double click on it. It drops that in, and let's grab these three. I'm going to start down here at the bottom and then shift click up there at the C, grab those, bring them down to the cloner, drop that in. We can get rid of that default clone. We don't need it. And I do want to grab that spline actor right there and go ahead and make it a child so that we have everything together right there. And now we should be on the cloner. We should be able to bring this down and place it where we want to. And I'll label this now. And that's not cat text, but we'll go with it. So with that cloner selected, let me make a little more room right here. And we'll drop down here to create linked effector. And we'll make some adjustments to it. We'll go back to our box right there. And I'm going to jump out of here so that I can see this a little bit better. I like this top view a little bit better. I can see that effector right there and where I need to be with it and how I can increase the size of it. So make sure this inner and outer extent is set to free right there. And then I'll go ahead and start adjusting. Let's see, I'm not real sure. The car word should be right in that area. So I'll go with that for right now. And let's see, I'm going to set this. Actually, I'll set this to 150. And then I'll set this to 300. And we'll take a look at it. Let me click in here so it updates. And now I'm going to jump back into our main view. Probably jump out of the camera and zoom around so I can see this a little bit better. I'm going to hide. It all starts getting a little bit cluttered. So let me go in here and hide this effector. Should have left it hidden. There we go. So now we know which effector we're looking at. And there, let me jump to the side here. We should be lined up. Yeah, we're lined up well there. And looks like we're lined up pretty well right here. Let me go down to that effector and bring it up just a little bit. That looks good. Maybe close up that inner extent just a little bit. We'll try 125 on it. Yeah, that works good. We're going to use that offset again. And on the scale, I'm going to set that to 0. And we'll need to flip that type right there, invert it. And then we can also change our easing right here to that outback. We can take a look at that now. I'm going to go up here and move it right here. So we'll animate it and then get a good idea whether or not we need to adjust this distance between these two. And so I'll move this in just a minute, but I'll just start right here around 75. I know I want it to come in sooner than that, but for right now, I'll set this first keyframe on it. And now we'll move this to about 105 for 1 second right there. And we'll change that to 0 and add in that keyframe right there. Let's take a look at that animation real quick, see how that looks. Let me go back to my main camera here. And I'm going to go ahead and shut that effector off, just so we're not seeing it. Let me bring back in the tint base right there. And I'll go ahead and grab this and just start somewhere in here. We'll see how it looks. All right, a little bit faster than that. Want it to come on in. Maybe right there. Maybe a little bit more. All of this is to preference, but I just want them all to kind of bounce in like they're, all right, we're getting there. Maybe just a little bit more. And I'm going to try to extend that just a little bit. Let me change these also. This might be affecting it also. Just feels a little bit different than the top. So let's take a look at that. A little bit slow. So may need to, since there's only 3 letters in here, may need to speed this up a little bit. And I'll try that and see what happens. And I think I will take a look at that effector, that extent just a little bit, which we'll have to change in doing that, we will have to bring that out just a little bit, maybe 325, and we'll have to adjust those keyframes on it. So Back here to our first keyframe, move this back a little bit more till that C is out, reset that, and then we can take a look at our animation again. Now I'm going to animate our little car. I showed you earlier the link to that. If you downloaded that, unzip that file. I'm going to bring it in as a GLTF. Over here to the content drawer, I'm going to go back to contents and I'm going to set up a folder for this. I'll go up here, new folder, and I'm just going to label this Clown Car. Open that up and we're going to need to import it. So right click in there and then import to current folder. I've navigated to it and there's the Clown Car. I'm going to bring in that GLTF right there, hit open on it. And I'm going to go with the defaults on all of this and just hit import. All right, that import is done. And before I move forward, I'm going to make sure I save everything. Control-Shift-S. Now, the way mine came in is I'm going to look for the static meshes right here. And all of that makes up this car, which in one way is nice because then you can kind of decide what you want to use, what you don't want to use. I am going to go pretty much with everything except for this base right here. So to get all of this together as a car, I'm going to use a blueprint. So I'm going to just right click right in here, go up to blueprint class, select it, and I'm going to go with an actor. And I'll label this Clown Car. Open it up. Here's our blueprint. And if you need to resize things so you can see everything well, I'm just going to select one of the objects and then hit Control A. I don't need the blueprint. Of course, it's not going to let me drop that in there. And like I said earlier, I do not need this object right here. So I'm just holding down Control and deselecting those. Then just grab any one of them, drag it in and drop it, and it will reconstruct the car for us. I'm going to zoom out now, and there is the car. I'm going to hit compile and then save this and close this out. And now we can go back into our content drawer and we will have that blueprint right there. We can grab that, drag it and drop it in, and there's our car. I'm going to try to position this a little bit better. So I'm going to hit reset on the location and then I'll just bring it forward. Just start getting an idea of the size of this thing, and then I'll bring it down. So it's much larger than what we need. And I'm going to go and we'll take a look at the scale. Let's see what 0.5 does. I think that works right there. Let's bring this on out. Might be still a little bit too big for this. So 0.25 or maybe 0.35. I think we can go with that. And I'm going to attach this to a spline like we did earlier with the text. So I'll go over here to modeling mode and we're in the create tab. I'm going to just draw a spline right there and I'm just going to click once, hit accept. And now let me go center that up. We'll reset the position of it. I like looking at it from this top view, just helps me see it a little bit better. And I'm going to right click on it right there. Go to our spline generation panel and I'm going to hit circle on this. Not really concerned about the number of points on this, but the radius, we'll need to bring that up a good bit. We're actually going to need to make sure that we're larger than this text here. It's going to be quite large actually. So let's try 250. And then I'm going to move this over. We're getting real close. Let's see. So we'll set our radius to 300 and we'll set our position on Y to 300. And that gives that car that space right there to loop around. So I'll just click over here, close out our panel. And now I'm going to go back into our main view. We'll attach that to the spline. So with the car selected, up here in operator stack, we'll go to add modifier spline path. And we'll select that path now. I'll just leave that on percentage and scroll down here and we'll set that, I believe, to 90%. Nope, we're going to need to actually set that to negative 90% to send it in the right direction. Now we can start working with the progress on how to animate this. And I want it to start from the back. So probably 25% right there makes sense. And then wherever we want that to come in, let's see. I think I'll start it right around here. We'll play with the timing on that. But with our progress, with that car sitting back there behind everything, 25% will set a keyframe right there. And we may have to play with the timing a little bit, but let's go to, we'll do 170 on this and see how the timing is. And then I'll bring this on around to 125. So that gets him all the way around, and we'll set that keyframe. I want it constant velocity, so I'll select these, right click, go to linear, and let's take a look at that animation now. All right, looking pretty good. Now we want him down there at the bottom because I want him revealing that last word, animation. So bring him right there, and I think what we'll do is should be able to grab that spline actor and push that down. About right there. And let's take a look at that now. All right, might be a little too slow and may need to come in a little bit faster. So we'll make those adjustments. That's going to be very easy. So I'll bring this down a good bit in time right there and then move it forward some more. And let's just take a look at that. All right, so I definitely want to move that forward some more. Have him coming on around as that text is ending. And maybe just a little bit more. Our last word of text down there is just the word animations. So back in our motion design mode, I'll go to actors, text actor, add that in right there. And then I'm just going to type that in, animations, hit uppercase on it. We'll need to bring it forward so we can see it. I'm going to try dropping that down to 12. I believe I changed that to Bookman old style right there. Again, doesn't really matter too much, just whatever your preference is. And I'm going to start positioning that. Let's see, I want it just right in front of that text. So not out too far. And then we'll bring that down and slide it over. Let's see, I'm going to center that up just so it gives me a better idea of where it needs to be. That's always helpful. And we can set that to 0. That way we know it's dead center. And I'll bring that up and maybe make this a little bit bigger. Try maybe 20 on that. Yeah, that looks good. And we'll give it a little bit depth on our geometry. I'll try extruding that maybe about 10. And then I'm going to change this to black text. You can change it to whatever you want to. I will add in, set this to custom. And we'll just create a new material for it. With that selected, I'll go up here to motion design and just create a black material real quick. With that selected, then we'll go back in and we'll add it into the front, the back, the extrude, and the bevel on that. Now what we need to do is work out the timing on him zooming by and this animating in. And I am going to use the 3D transform properties on this text to animate that in. Just an easy way to make it pop in. So we'll start somewhere right in there. And let me go to those properties. We have to enable those properties. So it's under layout effects right here. And I'm going to click that add element and drop down here to transform effect. I'm going to use the scale. So I'll start maybe about right here on 74 to animate this in. I'm going to change this easing right here. I'm going to go from none to linear right here. And so I'm going to bring that all the way down on the scale progress to 0. We'll set a keyframe. This is going to happen real fast. And probably right in there, we'll bring that up to 100%. Let's see if that's going to work. That should work. And That way, while the car is in front of it, it will animate 100% from 0 up to 100%. So let's take a look at that now and see how it looks. All right, looks good. All right, and for the background, I'm going to go into meshes here. I just used the Cyclorama. I'm going to double click on it, drops that in, and we'll need to reposition it a little bit. So there's our static mesh actor, the Cyclorama right there. I'll jump up here and I'm going to start bringing this down just a little bit so we can see it. There's the floor. We'll set all of this up to the bottom. See, right in there. That looks good. And then I'm going to need to rotate it around. We'll go ahead and set this up to -90 degrees. And if you want to push it back some, you can, whatever you want to do on that. Let's see, I'll just push it back just a little bit. Didn't do that on the earlier one, but we'll just try that right there. And we'll make a simple material for this. With that selected, I am going to go to Material Designer and we'll start a new one. Go into the base color. I will just go ahead and set this up to a solid black there. But I'm going to add an effect on this layer. So with it selected, go to Effects, and it should be under Generators. And I'm going to do this gradient linear right here, add that in. And I'm pretty sure I go just kind of with the basics on that. And I'll save this real quick, save as new, and then we'll just label this background BG. Close that out of the way, and we can take a look at our final render here. I hope this has been helpful. For more on motion media design and content creation, hit the like and subscribe button and check out my other tutorials.